In this episode, we preview the NHL 2021 playoffs and make our picks as to who will win each playoff division with Dennis Bernstein and Joe Yerdon. We unload the Jack Eichel news on Sabres Media Day. Also, we break down the Montreal Canadiens, how they look versus their supposed playoff opponent, the Toronto Maple Leafs, update on their injuries, and how bright the future looks with Cole Caufield. Thanks to the help of Scott Matla and Trey Wilson. Hit the music. Welcome to Jablam Sports Hockey, folks. I'm your host, Peter Borjaranov, and the mic is always on. You can find me on Twitter at Russia98. You can find the full show at Jablam Sports. If you have any questions or comments, please tweet us. Use the hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports. Please subscribe to us if you haven't done so yet, and click on the three dots in your podcasting app. Share our show with three hockey fans you know. Thank you, everyone. Remember, check out our website. Go to jablamsports.com to see all our podcasts and even game notes for each episode. You'll get links to all the things we mentioned on this show, including guests. For our podcasts, click on podcasts and then hockey on this show specifically right on our website. Time for our special playoff preview, Trending Now. Joining me for Trending Now is Dennis Bernstein and Joe Yerdon. Dennis is on the hot stove on satellite Sirius XM. You can find that show on 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Is that right, Dennis?
Yeah, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on Channel 91.
There you go. And obviously on Kings of the Podcast covering the LA Kings. And you can find him on Twitter at DennisTFP. And Joe Yerdon, he's been all over the place, including NBC Sports, NHL.com, and most recently with The Athletic. Of course, specifically usually covering those interesting Sabres, which we will get to shortly. You can find him on Twitter at Joe Yerdon. Welcome to the show, experts.
Hi again, Peter. Good to be with you.
Great to be with you, Pete. Let's do it.
Let's do this. So we will talk all about the playoffs shortly, but let's go to the bomb that was dropped by Media Day in Buffalo. And that was everybody. I think it seemed like everybody kind of like, we've had enough, right? It was Ristolainen saying, he wants to be with a contender. Even Reinhart kind of, circled around that. And Eichel pretty much said that there's been some disconnect between the organization and his side with his injury, and he hasn't been happy about it. And even Mike Harrington tweeted the direct quote from Eichel saying, I think I have a lot of thinking to do this offseason. I think there's a lot I have to consider. For now, obviously, I'm here and I'm captain of this hockey team. My goal is to win hockey games with this organization. But hopefully, and further on more, hopefully I have good more years in this amazing game, and I've got to do what's best for me, and I have to take care of myself. Joe, Where does that leave him with management? Is it pretty much set and done and he's out of there?
It certainly sounds like that. That's for sure. The kind of injury he's dealing with, it's a herniated disc in his neck. It sounds like he wants to get it operated on, to get it fixed, to get things going towards getting rehabbed and ready for next season. And the team doesn't want him to do that. They kind of want to do things in a different way. And considering everything that Jack's seen in his time in Buffalo with guys going through injuries and whatnot. And, I think of a guy specifically like Zach Bogosian, who had his hip operated on 1 year, came back, and then then ran into an issue where he needed to get the other hip operated on. And supposedly Zach wanted to have them both done in the first place. And they said, no, just do one at a time. And ended up costing Zach about a season's worth of games. And as we know, that didn't end very well. Well, it ended well for Zach because he got traded to Tampa Bay and won the Stanley Cup. But it did not work out well for the Sabres in the end. And most things haven't worked out well for the Sabres the past, 10 years or so.
Wow. And Dennis, let's switch it up right to you and think, what would a trade to LA look like?
Well, before I say what the trade would look like, I agree with Joe. And to me, there was like too many I's and not enough we's in what Jack was talking about. He was just, and I get it. I understand it. I get the frustration. And that's the one side of it. The other side of the coin is, as you pointed out, like every Sabre who got on a call was either, okay, I'm ready to leave, or I'm sad. Like there was nobody that was saying, hey, you know what? I love Buffalo. I love the area. I want to stay here. I want to be part of the solution. I didn't hear that from anybody. No. And to me, that's a big issue for me, which goes to the organization. And Joe's in the market, so he can certainly talk on the failures of the organization. The problem is Kevin Adams got to undo a lot of mistakes that were made by Jason Botterill. So that's part of it. So with respect to a trade to LA, I don't know. It would probably be something along the lines of a 4. Look, it had to be a 4-for-1 because I'm discounting the season from Jack. To me, Jack's an 80-point player in an 82-game regular season. He's still a number 1 center in this league. All the metrics indicate that. I'm just throwing the season out. So it would be something like Alex Turcotte, Quentin Byfield, the first and the second for Jack. That's what I would be offering. And no, yeah, the Sabres, and Joe can attest to this, they've played better under Don Granato. I mean, I know the heat's off this team, but when you look at Casey Middlestat and you look at Dylan Cousins, if you could add another couple of young centers, just wave the white flag, say we're going to rebuild, although it's not that far from rebuilding because, you know, the worst team in the league at this point in time. But I think you got to get younger. And the other thing is, it's not like Jack's contract is an anchor, right? He's got Skinner at $9 million and Poso at $6 million. So it's not like there's just one player who's a troublemaker and he's too expensive. And, you know, the trade that, and somebody suggested, if they could sucker somebody into taking Jeff Skinner's deal on top of Jack and getting more assets back, like you do, that's an automatic. Then it's a mulligan, it's a do-over. So I think from an LA perspective, that's what it would look like the deal. I've been advocating it from day one. I've been advocating it from last season when Jack wasn't unhappy. The question is, are you ever going to make that player happy? I think in an organization like LA and living in LA and, you know, walking either in Santa Monica or Hermosa Beach, he's probably going to be happier away from the rink. But this is still an elite player who I think has a lot of value. So you can't just say, okay, he hasn't had a good season. His attitude isn't the greatest. There's a disconnect. So you're going to discount this player. If they do trade him, they have to max out the value. Kevin Adams has to get this trade right if it happens.
Joe, you would think Eichel would want to go with a team with just a better organization in terms of somebody can handle this injury better, right? And that could be LA and it could be New York.
Yeah, it could be a lot of teams. Pardon me. Could be a lot of teams. Got me all choked up here on Jack. It's the kind of thing right now where I think any place would seem to be a better fit for Jack at this point. Just based on how everything went down today and how miserable it's been in Buffalo these past few years. I mean, just the reactions from some of the other guys today. I mean, Sam Reinhart was non-committal when they were asking about, doing a long-term deal. And he's a year away from being UFA. And I can't imagine the Sabres going in saying like, yeah, we'll walk you to UFA. We'll just sign you to another 1-year deal. Like that kind of thing can't happen. But in Jack's case, I mean, this is the sum of all fears when it comes down to it. I mean, when everything started to kick off a little bit last summer with, the sudden firing of Botterill and the firing of guys like Randy Sexton and Steve Greeley, who Jack was close with from his time at Boston University, those guys getting swept out the door really didn't sit very well. And I think it wasn't too much of a secret that Kevin Adams suddenly had to start taking calls on who might want to get Jack Eichel, be it the Rangers or the Kings or whoever. But if he gets traded, if I'm the Sabres, I got to send him to the Western Conference. I cannot be haunted by him every year in the Eastern Conference. That's why the Rangers to me are a non-starter. Granted, the Rangers have their own problems right now. But if I'm sending them out west, I mean, the Kings have the prospect pool. They've got the guys that can make that trade done. The other one that could do it is Anaheim, but I don't know that they're in the same. I don't know that that's a good enough spot for Jack because it's a little bit more low profile than LA, obviously. But I think Anaheim would be making bigger sacrifices out of their prospect pool to make it happen. Now, if they wanted to include John Gibson in the deal, sure, that probably gets things done a little bit easier. But if I'm Jack, I'm just hoping that the trade call doesn't end up in Calgary and ends up in Southern California.
All right, let's switch it up and let's go to some teams that are excited about their futures, and that's the playoff teams. Let's go straight to the East and talk about the matchups there. It looks like it's trending Pittsburgh versus New York Islanders and Washington versus Boston. Who are your favorites in this division, Dennis?
Well, Pittsburgh's been fantastic, and a guy from Los Angeles that came in and seems to be scoring multiple goals every game. Jeff Carter is going to certainly help them with respect to depth. My question is the goaltending, right? Number one. Number two, I saw that act against the Islanders last year with respect to the postseason, and we got to remember. Look, I give Pittsburgh all the credit. When Berkey and Hexie came in, I said this is not going to be easy. I see this team regressing. And they caught fire. The goaltending solidified. But you have to remember, they've lost 9 of the last 10 playoff games, right? So they've got to prove it to me in this round, because right now they look dangerous. They're clicking on all cylinders. They're getting goaltending. A guy like Mike Matheson, who was a question mark defensively, is playing very, very well. And they've been basically doing it without Geno Malkin. It's a testament to Sid Crosby. Look, Connor McDavid should win the MVP unanimously. But you could see how valuable Sid is, and he carried this team, and he's got players around him. So for right now, a slight edge to Pittsburgh over the Islanders. But again, the Penguins got to prove it to me in the postseason. The other matchup, you can throw a blanket over both teams. That to me, that's a 7-game series. Boston really showed me when they got Taylor Hall. I didn't think Taylor Hall was going to be fit in Boston. I didn't think he was that type of player, the grinder that they really need, but he certainly galvanized David Krejci. He woke up that second line. The left side of the defense has been better. Rask appears to be healthy. So to me, that's a long series. The question mark, I think, is you got to go back to Kuznetsov. He's the X factor at this point in time. I assume Tom Wilson's going to behave himself in the postseason, which may be a dangerous assumption. But I think the key is Kuznetsov, because he's been out with COVID a couple of times. He's underperformed. There's rumors about him trading. So right now, I think that's a 7-game series. I lean a little bit towards Boston at this point in time, because we also don't know about Ovi. Is he going to be 100%? So that's kind of the way I handicap the East.
Wait, Dennis, what do you have against Tristan Jarry? Hasn't he played well enough for you in the last year and a half at least?
No, not in the postseason. No, I don't trust them in the postseason. I think that if they had, going back to the expansion draft, I think they'd want to do over at this point in time. So yeah, I want to see it in the postseason. If he asserts himself and plays well in the first round, I'll say, okay, then they're on board. But this team has done nothing in the postseason the last couple of years. So I'm going to wait and see.
Joe, are you still iffy as well, just like Dennis, with that goaltending for the Pens?
I haven't been a huge Jarry fan since the get-go. I mean, I was the guy saying the Pens could have been the team looking on the outside of the playoffs before the season started.
Right.
I thought they were going to regress quite a bit, given the questions on defense. I certainly didn't see Cody Ceci being a very valuable member of their defense and playing very well.
Amen to that, Joe.
Oh man, and Matheson. I mean, there's big questions there. So the moves they've made on D have certainly worked out. I mean, Mike Sullivan's one hell of a coach. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But I like that Pittsburgh has gotten healthy at the right time. I mean, adding Jeff Carter. I mean, I'm a huge Carter fan. I thought that was a great move for them, especially with Malkin being up in the air. But now Malkin's healthy. He's getting back in. He's getting his legs back underneath him. It's really hard for me to not like Pittsburgh, but the Islanders, just I don't want to call it the trap, but it's just they bore you to death. They stingy it up like crazy. They've played pretty badly here the last couple of weeks. I mean, I watched Buffalo and Michael Hauser beat them a couple of games in a row here. So I'm a little bit edgy about saying anything nice about the Islanders, but their style of play leans more towards playoff success than Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh, listen, they're gonna have their hands full dealing with the Isles here. I think Pittsburgh should win it, but I think this is gonna go 6, maybe 7.
Mm-hmm. And Joe,
that's if that ends up being those two teams playing. There's still a little bit. I think there's like another game left where those matchups are still a little in the air.
Yeah, that is true. And if it was Washington-Boston, are you on the edge as well for Boston to pull this out in 7, just like Dennis?
I'm way more worried about Washington just because of the health of Ovi, the way that they've kind of scuffled here of late. I think if Ovi comes back and he's healthy and good to go, I'm not sweating him too much. I do agree with Dennis though, because Kuznetsov is the total wild card, where if he shows up big, the Caps are going to be in a much better spot. Oshie's played great lately. I love the way he's played, especially, given what happened with his dad passing. Sure. But the way Boston's played, I mean, Hall with Krejci. I mean, Krejci had a great season already. He just needed somebody to kind of be his giddy up partner, and Hall's been that guy for sure. Mike Riley was an unbelievable pickup for them on defense. They had so many D questions, and Riley's been a huge pickup for them. And yeah, Rask is back healthy. I mean, Jeremy Swayman was playing really well, even while Rask was out for a bit. So I think they're a little bit more settled in goal. I think Boston's kind of got their mojo going. So I think that's destined to be a deep series. I think that's going to be a lot of fun to watch, though.
Let's go to the Central. This one is set. Nashville will be playing the top seed Carolina. Joe, is this a done deal and you don't see Nashville at all posing any threat to the Hurricanes?
UC Saros has had just an unbelievable season. I think if you told me before the year that Pekka Rinne was going to have a bad season, I would have told you Nashville's out. Like they have no chance. But Saros has been incredible, and you know what? They got some action going. Like they've got a lot of confidence going for them right now. And, Ryan Johansson's been a big part of that. They've got some guys that are playing well, but I mean, Carolina should roll. There's no doubt. The Canes should be able to handle that. I think the only question is, how do they handle goaltending? I think Ned should be the guy. But if he falters, at least you've got Mrazek there. Whereas I think last year it was a bigger problem where if Mrazek went down, you were just kind of like, okay, I'm not sure how this is going to go, but I think they're a little bit more settled there. Their defense is very good, and they can score like crazy. 2-0 coming back in, boy, you didn't think a team like that could miss a guy, and that was, they were doing really well and they would miss a guy, but 2-0 getting back in there has been fantastic for them. And Carolina, I like a lot to do very well in these playoffs.
Dennis, are you comfortable with their goaltending with Carolina?
To beat Nashville, yeah. And Nashville caught a break because Dallas they had the season from hell, right? I mean, they were so injured. If Tyler Seguin's healthy, they're in the postseason. I mean, and they lost all those games in extra time. You look at how many, it was 14 games or something like that, of 56 they lost there. So, and I'm on board with Joe. I've watched Carolina the last month. They are scary fast. They are smart. They are fast. They don't beat themselves. Their defense is solid. The question mark's goaltending, but I think it's certainly enough to get by. And this is the one division where it matters to come in first, because that other playoff round is a bear, Tampa and Florida. And I give Florida all the credit in the world, guys. When Ekblad went down, I go, that's it, done, third. They're not going to beat anybody. They've risen up since then, and they played great. They have great talent on that team. Everything's finally clicking. Look, let's be real here. If you watch them against the Islanders last season, right, they were soft. Well, what did they do? They went out and got Patrick Hornquist. They went and get the Carter Verhaeghe. They got more sandpaper to go on with that talent. So that's going to be, I think, the most exciting round, because I give them credit. And Tampa ran to Twitter when they had that video of both Kucherov and Stamkos on the ice to try to intimidate everybody. So, but I think it's an easy win for Carolina. They're clicking on all cylinders. And it wouldn't be, to say it right now, it wouldn't shock me if they won it all.
Wow. Crazy. Are you on with Dennis on this, Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. No, I'm totally on board with Carolina's been one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the league this year. And now they've really got it going. But the Tampa Florida series to me is going to be one of the ones to watch in the first round, because that, as they showed the other night, there's some heat there. I mean, right. It's a rivalry. It's always been the regional rivalry kind of thing, but that's an actual rivalry now. I mean,
it's getting nasty, right?
Oh,
guys getting speared, right? Speared, slashed. It's going to be, and that's the problem, because coming out of that series, Pete, you're going to be exhausted, and I assume Carolina's going to be fresh. So that's the one advantage, I think, in this division. Like in the East, you're up against 2 bears anyway. It's going to be tough getting out. But in this division, it's going to be easier for the 1 seed, assuming they're going to have an easy time with Nashville.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, Tampa's got the Stanley Cup in their corner, and you don't know what Kucherov and Stamkos are gonna be available for exactly. I mean, Stamkos they basically dangled it over everybody's head, he's coming back, and he played 1 game in the final, and that was enough for him. But But Kucherov is the big one, because I think everybody's assuming he's going to be good to go right off the hop. But I mean, if he is, I mean, that changes everything about their attack. Tampa Bay is already very good, and they don't need Kucherov, which is crazy. They don't need Kucherov. They don't need Stamkos to be able to have a lot of success. But Florida is a very good team, and I think if they end up upsetting or knocking off Tampa, I won't even call it an upset, but if they end up knocking off the Lightning, man, oh man, a Florida, Carolina. I mean, I know that traditional minds are going to be like, Florida, Carolina, who cares? That'll be a knockdown, drag out kind of series, because Florida's been so underappreciated all season.
Yep. Agreed.
And has there been a better trade? You guys already mentioned Jeff Carter to Pittsburgh, but it just seems like it's been a perfect fit with Bennett in Florida.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been he was a guy who was in trade rumors forever. It seemed like it was at least like the last 2 or 3 years. He was a guy who was like, well, when's Calgary going to give him up? And he goes to Florida, and he goes from being, a grind line guy for the Flames to being the top scorer for Florida with Huberdeau and Barkov. Like, that's crazy. Like, that's crazy to think that would happen, but man, what a fit. What a find for them. That's just been an absolutely brilliant pickup.
Let's head out west. We've got those two big powerhouses. It looks like right now is trending Vegas coming into a kind of hot St. Louis team. Dennis, is this going to be easy pickings for the Knights? It seems like in the games that they played recently, they've handled the Blues fairly well.
Look, if Ron O'Reilly's going to play like this is Conn Smythe Ron O'Reilly right now. And he's good. I just don't think – because Tarasenko isn't the guy anymore, because those shoulder surgeries have sapped him of his goal-scoring ability. I think they're dangerous. They're tough. They're getting healthy. They're a good test for the 1 seed, but I think they're a beatable 4 seed, right? I don't think they're a live dog here, right? But I think that's a good test, because the other 2 teams, Colorado, Minnesota, assuming they play, it's a good warm-up. But I don't think this is 2019. I will say the team is resilient. They've been racked with injuries all year. I just don't see it happening. So a nice test for Vegas or Colorado if they get there, but I don't see them winning 4 games. I just don't think there's enough offense on that team right now to beat Vegas, and certainly not a Colorado.
Joe, same for you. It should be easy pickings for whoever's first against the Blues.
Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of what St. Louis has been able to do to kind of rally here. And O'Reilly's been incredible. He's just been absolutely dynamite. But for me, Binnington's still the big question there. I still, I know he got hot in 2019 and that was great for him, but I just haven't seen that same thing from him since. And Vegas is just a beast. They are every time they seem to have some kind of bump in the road, they seem to just drive right over it. They don't care. They just keep rolling. And to me, that's what's most impressed me about Vegas, is that it doesn't matter what's kind of gotten in their way. They just keep doing what they do, and they just keep rolling over teams. If it ends up being Colorado, Minnesota in the first round, though, boy, sign me up. Like that one, in Tampa and Florida are the 2 series that I want to watch everything, because Tampa and Florida have, like I said, with the regional thing, Colorado and Minnesota have history. Like there's a lot of history there, and a lot of it is just, Minnesota basically giving Colorado the finger a lot of the time. And it drives Abs fans absolutely bonkers that the team that always gets one over on them is the Wild. And you know what? Both teams are fantastic. Both teams are really good. And I think if they were in another division without Vegas on top of it, I would be picking them to get through their divisional playoff. I just think a Colorado Minnesota series is destined to go deep, and it's going to be nasty. Like that's a series that I think is going to be a knockdown drag out one.
Minnesota looks really recharged, and that helps with the Energizer Bunny that is Kirill Kaprizov. How exciting is he, Dennis?
Well, he's without question the Calder winner, right? I don't care about his age. He's only 24 years old. Yeah. Here's a situation where, and we could talk to the Buffalo fans, it doesn't take 10 guys to rebuild a franchise. Like last season, Minnesota had an average, boring team. Yeah. Without question. Right? Look, they get a little bit lucky with the goaltending. Cam Talbot found his form. Kakinen has been a nice find for them. But other than that, to add this guy to the lineup, he is galvanized. He's energized the team. You mentioned the Energizer Bunny. They're an entirely different, dangerous team. And they're confident. They never lose at home, right? And if they were to get through this round, Joe, talk about giving trouble. Minnesota gives Vegas all kinds of fits.
Mm-hmm.
Like they didn't want to play him last season when they were probably half as good. So yes, I agree that is a up-tempo, exciting series. But here's a situation where you add one dynamic player to an average roster and they become a contender. So it shouldn't take these teams, if you can find that type of player, like years and years to find the formula to it. So full credit to Billy Guerin on that, and Dean Evason, who nobody would have handicapped Dean Evason in the Jack Adams Award conversation, but he's got to be. And I agree with Joe on going back to the East on Sullivan. Like he's done a fantastic job, Mike Sullivan. He's never going to get the credit because of the star potential there. But yeah, the West can have two. The 2-3 in the West is going to be very, very exciting.
If you guys want to throw a team at me, who's coming out of the West, Joe?
I still got to ride Vegas. I think Vegas is going to have a bit of an. I mean, St. Louis is not an easy team to play against, but I think they'll have an easier time there. But I think Colorado, Minnesota, whatever team wins that is going to be very sharp. And Dennis is 100% right. If it's Minnesota, Vegas in the second round, oh God, Vegas is going to be pulling their hair out. Those two teams really do not like each other at all, and Minnesota drives them to fits. And and if Colorado gets through. I mean, geez, do you want to deal with Cale Makar, just doing what he does, and McKinnon and those guys? Like, I think the only question you have with Colorado is in goal, but does it matter when you're just getting raced off the ice by how fast they play all over the ice? I don't think it really matters there, but yeah, no, I got to lean Vegas. I love the way Vegas plays.
Finally, we go up to the North, which probably will be starting later than everything else. It's possible we finally see an original 6 Canadian matchup, the rivalry that everybody's been talking about for years, but we haven't seen it since like 1979. Toronto versus Montreal. Dennis, how exciting would that series be?
It wouldn't be that exciting. I would pick the Leafs. I've been making a joke the last week. Leafs in 3, 4-3. They can't beat them. It's like they go out for the opening faceoff and they're already up against it and they're losing. And if Price isn't healthy, Jake Allen, look, I give Jake Allen credit. He stabilized his team, but when you watch how they've struggled against these teams down the stretch, right, and the injury factors, some people in Montreal said, "Oh, they need Shea Weber." I'm like, are you kidding me? They need everybody. Toffoli's had a great season. Josh Anderson's been a nice pickup, but pound for pound, they don't compare. That's going to be easy for them. And I think that's what Edmonton's rooting for, is that Montreal stays at the 4, because for some reason, Montreal can figure out a way to beat Edmonton. But in this series, pound for pound, there's no way. Austin Matthews might go crazy in this series. I don't give Montreal much of a chance at all, Joe, to win this series at all.
No, I think Montreal is they're fortunate to have gotten as far as they have, and they're probably also fortunate that Calgary has just been kind of a mess this year. If Calgary had better goaltending from Markstrom and not had so many issues earlier in this year, maybe things turn out a little bit different there. But yeah, I mean, with Matthews having the season he's having, Marner just riding shotgun with him. William Nylander's been fantastic. They can blitz Montreal right out of the barn. And I mean, yeah, it's going to be cool to see it as a rivalry thing. I mean, we should have had it, probably should have had it as a cup final in 93. I mean, but LA and Gretzky had a lot to say about that instead. But I mean, that it'll be cool for all that entails, for all the history. But I think it would be Toronto in a roll. I'm with Dennis. Toronto in 3. Mark it down.
And finally, the Edmonton Oilers versus the Winnipeg Jets. Is there anyone that can even possibly stop Connor McDavid, Joe?
Nobody on Winnipeg's defense, that's for sure. And I don't think any of their forwards can really handle it either. The best they can hope for is that Connor Hellebuyck goes into Superman mode and can shut him down, which, hey, Carey Price did it to Edmonton last year. So, I mean, there is that possibility, and Hellebuyck is that kind of goaltender. So I think that's the Jets' best hope, is that he just goes absolutely out of his mind and can steal them 4 games in that series, because otherwise, if you got McDavid and Draisaitl racing at you, good luck. I mean, you don't really stand much of a chance if you're letting them go unfettered. And, I know Winnipeg's got a lot of pieces. They got a lot of guys that can fill the net too. I mean, I love Scheifele, Dubois. I mean, he's a great player too. And, Nick Ehlers has had a fantastic season. So if Winnipeg can get free, and I know Edmonton can make it very easy on teams to get free as well. I'm very hesitant to pick a winner. I mean, yeah, I got to pick Edmonton, but I'm not happy about it because I think Winnipeg's got enough stuff out there where, like, if they can win game one, put some doubt on the Oilers, and you'll figure out what their metal is made of.
I think that Larry Robinson, Guy Lapointe, Serge Savard might be able to stop Connor McDavid, but short of that, no, you'd have to put 3 or 4 Hall of Famers on the ice. This series is going to be 7-6 every game. So I get Joe's reservations about Edmonton, because they're an incomplete team, and they should, with those 2 guys at the top, they should be winning games easily, and they don't, right? And you saw Koskinen the other night. I don't think he's getting a game. I mean, he went 0 for 4, broke his stick on the post and went off the ice. Is Mike Smith, and then what happens when Mike Smith pulls up lame in the second game of the series? So it's a better matchup for them than Chicago, because Chicago, it was a pride thing, right? They had a bad season last year, but you had Taves and Kane and Keith saying that this is a pride thing. This isn't a pride thing. There's no defense in it. This might be the most exciting series from a goal scoring standpoint. I think it's like, I was being a little facetious, but I think it's 7-6. Edmonton should get by them, right? But again, coming out of the division, I think it's Toronto's to lose, to be honest with you, but I think this will be an exciting one. But I'm with Joe. If Winnipeg did rise up and win and Hellebuck stood on his head, it wouldn't shock me at this point.
There you go. Those are some great picks, guys. And again, you can find Joe on Twitter at Joe Yerdon and Dennis at Dennis TFP. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me.
It was a pleasure, Peter. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. It was always fun.
Before the playoffs start up, I thought, let's do one last team ISO. Let's go to the Big O, where this week we are team ISOing the Montreal Canadiens. On to discuss the Habs are Scott Matla. He's senior writer for Eyes on the Prize, a part of SB Nation, as well as the co-host of the Locked On Canadiens podcast. You can find him on Twitter at Scott Matla. As well, Trey Wilson. He's the co-host of the Habs Unfiltered podcast and covers the Canadian for the Hockey Writer. You can find him on Twitter at TregeWilson_THW. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello.
Yes, so Montreal has all but locked up this playoff spot. It looks like they're just slowly going in. The Leafs won't let them go in, right? They're just like, do we got this last spot? Do we have this last spot? I guess we have this last spot. It's pretty much ours. I don't think Vancouver or Calgary is going to win every single game that they have remaining and Montreal lose the last 2 games, right?
It's mind-blowing that it's been like the lowest bar possible for the Canadiens to cross, and they just keep stumbling over it in every game. It's like this. The game that's currently on right now, they scored early. Jake Evans had a beautiful goal, and then they immediately gave it right back. Against Toronto, 2-goal lead, immediately gave it back. And it's like, I am begging you guys, you need a win. One win, and you can rest Jake Allen. You can rest your starters. Please, for your backup starting goalie, whatever you want to call him, just win. They need a point tonight, and they're struggling to even get to that point. It's like, oh my God, lowest bar, guys. Come on. I know you can do this.
I fully expect them. Well, I was fully expecting them to win at least tonight with Kostitsin and nets for Edmonton. But I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if they lose the last 2 games and just get in because Calgary and Vancouver each beat each other. So, I mean, that's all it's going to – they play each other 4 times. Calgary wins 1, Vancouver wins 1. It's all over. I guess my biggest issue is the deployment of players by Ducharme. And I think that's why Montreal's where they have nothing to lose even right now. I see where you're coming from, Scott, and I totally agree with you. Like, just get this over with and so we can – maybe put Kotkaniemi more than 2 minutes a period like he played today or something. Get these guys rolling for the playoffs to come in. But I don't know. It's tough to watch. As a Habs fan, it's really tough to watch because you're high for 5 minutes and then you're low for 10. Then they get a goal and you get, yeah, this might be something, and then it just all goes to crap. So,
Well, it looked really good with Cole Caufield scoring back-to-back game-winning overtime winners, and let's go with Cole. Like, is he that expected to be as good as the broadcasters at Sportsnet make him look out to be? Like, all the time, it's Cole Caufield 100% of the time. 2 big game winners to start his career. Wow. He looks like a stud to me.
I think the biggest thing, and I've tried to temper expectations on our own show, is that Caufield is not going to be a possession monster. That's not his game. He is one shot, one kill, something the Canadiens have never had. Under Claude Julien, they were always this good possession team that could never finish. He's a finisher. They need to put him in that spot. I think opposite of Corey Perry is actually a really good spot. Perry is very good at finding lanes for passes and getting shot and getting them to where Caufield is, because he finds soft spots. People are expecting him to come in and just goal, 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 goal. This is a kid who was going from the NCAA to outstanding games in Laval to the NHL. That's a lot of adjustment. I think as a power play weapon, we can expect him to be dangerous, and even in an exploitation role, like where he is now, people are like, he's on the fourth line. It's like, okay, but they're playing Edmonton's fourth line, and Edmonton's fourth line is AHL guys, Temper your expectations. Don't expect him to just be circling the zone with the puck on a string like Armia does or like Nick Suzuki can do. He's going to float into that open space and be a shooter. He's going to be a finisher, not a possession monster. And I think people have a skewed version of what is a good hockey player. He can be really good at shooting the puck and not be a possession monster. Who cares if the puck's in the net? He's doing exactly what I want him to do. And he's 20 years old? Everyone take a deep breath. It's not the end of the world if he's not lighting it up 5 goals a game kind of thing.
He has 3 goals in 5 games. For a guy coming from NCAA, what more do you want to expect? What more can you expect? And I totally agree there, Scott. He's going to find the open ice. He's not going to bring the puck in. He's not going to, although he can, but he's not going to be the guy that's going to be carrying the play into. He's going to be the guy finding the open space, waiting for the pass so he can just fire it into whatever little hole he can find around that goalie. And I agree. I think Perry's perfect with him. I don't like Stahl being the center of his line, but who cares? He's on the fourth line for the last few games of this. This is not the season. This is not the Cole Caufield season in Montreal. That's going to be next season. We're just getting a taste of whether or not he can actually play in the NHL or not. And I think he can. He the 2 games he was in, I thought he was dominant on the forecheck and back check. He scored his goals. He got his points. He created offense. I think he's doing the same in Montreal. He's learned in the fast pace of the NHL, and that's all this few games he's playing is, just to see if he can actually play in the NHL, and he can. So next year's the year you can start worrying after 20 games next year if he doesn't have 10 goals. Or I'm not saying you'll get 10 goals in 20, but we know our fan base.
Expectations are always tempered when it comes to Canadiens fans and top prospects, right?
So you say he's an NHL player, Trey. Is he capable? What's the potential that we have here to untap?
If he can get a good passing center, I can see 40 goals out of Caufield easily. I can see him doing that. But he's one of those guys that needs NCAA, when he didn't have Hughes, he still scored. But he needs someone, and with Wisconsin this year, he dominated when it was just him. But that's NCAA. In the NHL, he needs that guy to give him the puck, and he needs that guy to get him the open ice. I think you put him with KK and Anderson next year, and I think you might have a good line there.
They lost those back-to-back games against the Leafs, and Leafs pretty much said, by beating you, we can continue beating you into the first round of the playoffs by planting them there by doing so. So what do we expect, Scott, out of a Leafs versus Habs series that we haven't seen in, 42 years? 1979?
My expectation is it's going to be ugly. The biggest thing, and a lot of people on Twitter have been preaching this, is that the Canadiens are beat to hell. There's no Brendan Gallagher. There's no Shea Weber. Paul Byron just came back. Carey Price is on the shelf. You have all these pieces that are missing right now, and you bring in Brendan Gallagher, and that's a spark plug immediately. That's a guy that drives opposing teams nuts. And you have Corey Perry, who drives opposing teams nuts. You have Jake Evans and Arturi Lehkonen, who are relentless forecheckers. And we saw in the playoffs last year what Jake Evans is capable of. We're seeing what he's doing tonight. He just set up another goal for Paul Byron tonight. They're very good. And then you're adding in a Cole Caufield, who is a game breaker with extra space if there's ever a power play. I think it's going to be physical. And the best part is the pressure isn't on the Canadiens to perform in this series. The ball is entirely in Toronto's court. They have the pressure of not having won in the first round, not even making it out of the play-ins last year. They have $40 million and all these players tied up. If you can't beat a Canadiens team that is dragging its mangled corpse into the playoffs, that's going to reflect on that core again. Yeah, you got beat by Boston. What was your excuse for getting beat by them the next year when you knew what they were going to do? What's your excuse for Columbus? You lose to this Montreal team and you go, okay, now what? The pressure is on them to do it. They could go out there and win in 4 games. That's what they're expected to do, I'm pretty sure, by a lot of people right now. Anything short of them winning convincingly is going to ripple that panic throughout Toronto, I feel like.
I think it's going to be a physical game. Montreal healthy. I mean, look, Montreal's played 4 games a week for the last 3 weeks. They've had 6 players out injured. Tatar and Byron just got back. Yet Toronto only won two of the 3. And 2 of those games were very close games. They weren't blowouts by any means. Well, Montreal won 1, and I think Toronto won 5-1. But the last game, 3-2 game, wasn't a blowout. So the way I look at it is even the game before that, when Primo started, they scored 4 goals in the first, and then Montreal battled back, and I basically beat them 2-1 through the rest of the game. So come playoffs, it's a different style. Montreal's going to have rest in between games instead of playing the way they are now. Can Montreal beat them? I think they can. Will Montreal beat them? I don't know. It's tough to say, but I don't think it's going to be 4-0. I think it's going to be a good 6-7 game series. And it's going to be up to whether or not Carey Price can play like he did in the bubble last year. That's the way I break it down.
Scott, you mentioned those names that are banged up. We got Drouin, Weber, Deneau, and you mentioned the heart and soul, I think, of the team is Brendan Gallagher. Who's ready come playoff time? Any of them? Gallagher's ready? Can any of them come back?
I imagine Gallagher and Weber will both be ready for game 1. Carey Price and Philip Deneau are the 2 that concern me because concussions are terrifying. You never know what is it going to be. Like we saw in the game against Edmonton a couple of weeks ago, Jujhar Khaira took a seemingly innocuous hit from Alexander Romanov and his legs were gone. If Carey Price, sometimes takes a shot off the mask or gets, run into or bumped in and it re-aggravates that, where are we at on things? And the even scary part is looking at the team now. Yeah, you have the expanded roster. Even the Laval Rocket, who they could draw black aces from for that bottom 6, are so beat up. They had to play Josh Brook on the wing last week. And admittedly, he did very well, but like Ryan Paling's not there. Joseph Blandisi's not there. Joel Teasdale is not there. They're missing all of these bodies, and it's so hard. I have to give Ducharme some slack in that he was put in a no-win situation in terms of the salary cap, and that's from the GM. And he's got to manage with what he's got available to him. He has this minuscule pool of people he can draw from, and that's it. And it's tough. And I think in the playoffs, we will see Brendan Gallagher healthy. I do think he'll be ready. If Carey Price is ready to go, that's a mystique thing. Like Toronto, you're staring down Carey Price. When the lights are on bright, Carey Price shines the best. We saw it in the bubble last year. We've seen it in the Olympics. We've seen it in down the stretch a couple of years ago when the Canadiens were chasing that final spot and fell just short at the end of the season. Like there is so much that this team can do in the playoffs if they're actually ready. And I think, like we've said, Brendan Gallagher is going to be the heart and soul of that. He's going to infuriate teams. And not only that, he just does all the right things this team needs. He's always getting to the net. He's always causing trouble. He's getting shots over and over and over again. That's what this team needs right now.
So if the end is near. If it is possible, like the Leafs do beat them, do you guys see some big changes happening this summer? I know, Trey, you wrote about Joel Bouchard. He's done a terrific job with the Laval Rocket, and we're going to put this on the website, SublimeSports.com. Season 6, episode 22, playoff preview, and also Habs talk here. Could we see Bouchard jump in there soon enough?
Oh, man. It's such a loaded question because, and I've had this debate in our locker rooms, I've had this debate on the show and just in private, and is Dominic Ducharme trying to wash off the Claude Julien system, or is this what Dominic Ducharme is right now in this condensed, compressed schedule that you don't have any time to, do anything? Like, you are constantly next game. You don't have time to rest. You don't have time to implement new systems. And I look at this team and I go, okay, out of anyone on this bench right now, one, Luke Richardson needs to not be back next year. If that's the only coach who goes, you can probably placate me this offseason and bring in someone respectable in that spot. But if this team starts next year and comes out looking like they have the last week to start next year, you're going to see Joel Bouchard behind the bench in almost no time flat, I would think, just because the team isn't performing the way that it can. We've seen what they look like when they're playing well under Ducharme. We saw it in that win streak where they dominated the Jets and they played well, and then it just kind of falls apart recently. And I don't know if it's just exhaustion, if it's the system, but eventually, sooner or later, you got to win games one way or the other. You're paid to coach this team to win games, and if you're not doing that, what are we paying you for at all then? Like, you could stick a dog behind the bench and be like, and go. It'll save you a lot of money and a bunch of other stuff too. So
I believe Ducharme's going to get this. I don't think Ducharme's going to get fired in the offseason. I will admit I followed the Mooseheads. I'm from Halifax. I followed the Mooseheads a lot. I was here in the Ducharme years. Mind you, we had a great Mooseheads team. But Ducharme's system that he ran in the Mooses is not the same system he's running right now in Montreal. His system there was for his system to work, the one he used in Halifax, he needs puck-moving defensemen. That's on Bergevin because he hasn't really gotten a good puck-moving defenseman. And they tried that. This seems to me he's a mix of Julien and and I kind of agree with Scott. I think he's slowly trying to take the Julien system out and implement his own without making a full 180 and saying, you're not doing this anymore. This is what you're doing. And it's hard to do when you don't have practice time. You basically have a game, day off, game, day off, game, day off, and you just can't do it. So I see him back next year. I think Bouchard is the better coach. And I don't want to lose Bouchard basically because I think he's the big reason why Montreal's development has been great lately. I don't want to lose him in Laval either. So there's my catch-22. Do I want Bouchard on the big club or do I want him developing? I would say I agree with Scott. If a month in, and if Bergevin doesn't pull the trigger, which he's known not to do, a month in, if they're still the same team they were at the end of this season, then Bouchard got to take over or someone does.
I think
I do believe Bergevin will be back. So if that's another question,
yeah,
Bergevin's safe for at least one more year.
You think I know a lot of people don't like some of the moves that, or even many of the moves Marc Bergevin has made. Scott, you feel Bergevin's got at least a year on with him?
Bergevin himself, who knows? He could be, halfway out the door, and he could be halfway to signing his name on a new piece of paper. Who actually knows at this point? I think Ducharme has, like I said, he has the offseason and the start of next season. If they come out and they're flat, Ducharme's going to get kicked right onto St. Catharines, and that's the end of that tale. Or someone pointed this out, is that he might slide back into an associate role like he was doing before, and Joel Bouchard is in that role. They've worked together before. They've worked at Team Canada together, so they have a working relationship. It's just a matter of, will it work at the NHL level? And a lot of people pointed out, it's like, oh, Bouchard, plays this or does this system that it's, a junior system. And I look at it and I go, if he gets you to buy in, the team's great. Like, I look at the Rocket this year and they have good players and they're a solid team, but they're one of the most dominant teams in the AHL because they got a buy-in. guys like Joel Teasdale and Joseph Blandisi under previous regimes would have been nothing. They would have been struggling to get anything. When you get a team that plays to their strengths, that's going to help. And Joel Bouchard is there to understand that he can't go, okay, you're a checking forward, you're a checking forward, you're a checking forward, you're a scoring forward, and just try to typecast people. He puts them in a spot that works. Watching the Canadiens now, it's like, you're Josh Anderson. You can be Brendan Gallagher now. And it doesn't work that way. They don't play the same game style. It's you're a scoring forward, or you scored some goals. You are on the scoring line now. And it's like, you can't just plug and play guys like they're all interchangeable. And Joel Bouchard understands that. And I think that's something that might help him out at the NHL level, especially with so many of these young guys that he's worked with in Laval, even for a little bit of time, coming up and into the system right now.
I can see a I was just gonna say I can see a swap too. Maybe Bouchard going to the NHL, Ducharme to AHL. I don't know if Ducharme would accept that, but yeah, that's a good consideration. Then both Joel becoming the head coach, him associate. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Again, you can find them on Twitter at Trey Wilson _THW for Trey, and for Scott at Scott Matla. Thanks for stopping by, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, bud.
I want to thank our guests today, Scott Matla and Trey Wilson, for breaking down the Montreal Canadiens. Montreal Canadiens have a bit of an options there, especially with a great coach and Joel Bouchard waiting on the wings. What are they going to do? Also, thanks to Dennis Bernstein and Joe Yerdon. It's always great talking to those guys. They're pros. And Dennis had some hot takes for his playoff predictions. And Joe, thanks really for trying to figure out what's going on for Sabres Nation over there. It does not look good for Sabres Nation again. And I hope at least that if they do move Jack Eichel, that they get a good package back and some good pieces to move on, because boy, oh boy, do those fans deserve a lot better than what's been happening time and time again. Remember, if you've enjoyed anything you've heard in this episode, or don't, please tweet at me or even our guests. You can follow me on Twitter at Russia98 or the entire team at Jablam Sports. If you want, you can also contact us on our website. You can use the hashtag at Jablam Sports, Jablam Sports, that's JABLAM, and our website is jablamsports.com/contact for our contact page there. Please check out our website. Go to jablamsports.com to see all our podcasts and even game notes for each episode, including this one. And you'll get our guests' info and links to things we mentioned on this show. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify. And of course, click on the 3 dots in your podcasting app and share this episode with 3 friends you know. Please and thank you. Also, follow us on our Facebook group, Jablam Sports. Check us out, folks. Thank you, everyone. And to every one of our listeners, I'm giving you a virtual hug. Stay healthy, listen, be yourself, and stay strong.